Okay, this is the last one of 5 sessions on personal leadership. So, somebody tell me, what is a leader, or who is a leader? A leader is an ordinary man leading an ordinary life. There you go. It don't happen every day. It don't happen every day, but you get a chance. Now, the title of the course, one other thing, where it says BTP ball. Every morning you get up, you do the 3 S's, and you grab your ball, and it represents what? Beta Theta Pi. It's on the ball. And you carry that ball with you everywhere you go. You don't know it, but you got it. And you represent this fraternity. Now, it also means what? Begin today with purpose. And the name of the course we're taking is Be a Leader. And the initials HTCYA. What does that mean? How to control your ass. That's a hard one. How to control your ass, because you got to get your brain in gear, right? So the first conversation we had, it wasn't really a conversation, but discussion or me talking to you, said, Lou Gessner said an organization to be successful, everybody has to be a leader, right? And we talked about tadpoles had no choice. They were going to be frogs, but leaders aren't made. Leaders aren't born, they're made. And you're going to make yourself a leader or not. We talked about, this is in the first conversation, trust is the foundation of leadership. And we talked about a lie can destroy that. And leaders get out of the boat, like Paul, and they become a rock. The conversation 2 was home. And we talked about you got to be honest with yourself. I said themselves and others. Kind of go down the list with me, guys. You got to be open to change. You got to be motivated to serve others. You got to be enthusiastic about what you're doing. And you got to have courage to be a leader. And courage means what? In French, strong heart. Leaders have to have a strong heart. We talked about the 4 types of individuals, right? There is the arsonist, the one that's always stirring up shit, like right across the street, excuse me. We talked about the air owners, or the stokers. There were some people over there, they really didn't start it, but somebody put salt in the water. Somebody kind of stoked it up, made it a little bit colder, didn't they? Across the street. And then there's some that just kind of cruised in there. A couple of them said, we really didn't do anything. We just happened to be there and kind of watched it. 5 of them. There was one thing they lacked, though. They lacked a firefighter, right? They lacked somebody to come in and say, hey, guys, you're going to give those boys frostbite. One of them's going to lose a toe. One of them will never walk right for the rest of his life. So they're all facing criminal charges, right? The 5 of them. The house is shut down. They have 143 members. 5 members brought that house down. We can't take that anymore. The next one was conversation number 3 was about time, and we talked about most everything in life is temporary, and you got to learn how to transition. You need something that's going to inspire you, because you're going to face hard times, and you're going to have decisions, make decisions. And that brings up the point. You can make a decision in a moment that will affect the rest of your life. Somebody over there decided to put those pledges in a bucket of ice. And their lives are affected from now on. And you know what? They thought they were doing the right thing for their fraternity, right? That's the way it was. That's the tradition of that house. It ain't going to be no more. Maybe the house won't be anymore. So, and then we talked about energy. And there's 3 kinds, in my opinion: spiritual, mental, physical. And discipline is the focus that allows you to focus those 3 energies on what you want to accomplish in life. And number 4 conversation was about that little book, right, Jack? Life is Tremendous. And it said, see it big, keep it simple. And we talked about you got to find joy in what you do. And we talked about if you ain't got it, you got to go get it. And serving others because we owe it to them. Experience is the best teacher, it just costs too damn much. Be flexible in your plan. You cannot motivate people, but you can create an environment where people can motivate themselves. And then the last thing we talked about, and I know this is a little old because this was over 2 weeks ago, we talked about the convergence of knowledge. And that leads us to the last program. Flip over to the last discussion. The convergence of knowledge. What is the convergence of knowledge? We're going to talk about that a little bit. And the last program is about wisdom. And I looked it up in the dictionary. You got wisdom on there? And it said, wisdom is an accumulated philosophic or scientific learning. It's knowledge, the ability to discern inner qualities and relationships, insight, good sense, and judgment. A wise attitude, belief, a course of action, the teachings of ancient wise men. And you know what? I bet you hear this next one. What's that? Proverbs what? 4:7? You see that? It says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and all thy getting, get understanding. So, part of wisdom is learning how to take wise counsel. Everybody know about Steve Jobs? Everybody knows Steve Jobs, right? You got an Apple computer, you got an Apple iPhone, iPad, whatever, right? Steve Jobs never had a college degree. He went to Reed College for 6 months. And he made a commencement address in 2005 at that college, and they called him back, and here's what he said. Now, I want you to think of what he said in relationship to what we've been talking about over these last courses. Steve Jobs said, death is very likely the single most important invention of life. This was after he knew he had cancer. It's life's change agent. The benefit of death is you know not to waste life living somebody else's choices. And we talk about you living your choices, you making the decisions for yourself, not listening to other people and being drug along with them. It takes courage to do that. Don't let the noise of others' opinion drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. What is intuition? It's another word for convergence. It's another word for bringing all of your knowledge together. It's John Brown Gordon telling his men to lay down at the Battle of Antietam. It's understanding human nature. And that's what convergence is. It's another word for intuition. It's a word that's a fashionable word right now in the business world. And if you go on an interview or somebody asks you a question, have y'all ever heard of convergence? You hadn't. Well, it's out there, believe you me. And it's a word that business people are talking about, and it's the kind of people want to hire. People who have intuition, people who have a vast knowledge. Flip it over. Apple's slogan is think different. Steve Jobs ordered the creation of a campaign that reflected the philosophy he thought had to be reinforced within the company he once co-founded, but was struggling at the time he came back to the company. And in 1994, the company was going bankrupt, and he brought John Scully in to manage his company for him. He did not understand the culture. But in 1994, Steve Jobs said this: when you grow up, you tend to get told the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world. And we talked about that. That's being a caretaker, right? You're being a caretaker. Try not to bash into the walls too much. Try to have a nice family life, have fun, and save a little money. That's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover the simple fact. The fact is, everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. The minute you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, you know if you push in, something will pop out the other side. You can change it. You can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, and make your mark upon it. That's what extraordinary people do. Extraordinary people don't take life at life's value. They go out and they make their own life. And that's what Steve Jobs is saying here. I think that's very important, and however you learn it, once you learn it, you'll want to change life and make it better, because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again. The Wright brothers. That's one of my favorite examples. The Wright brothers. What did they invent? What? The what? From where? From their stinking bicycle shop. Right? In a stinking bicycle shop. They made an airplane. The first airplane to fly for 90 seconds. Out of a bicycle shop. I think the only thing that looked like the bicycle shop was the two wheels on the front of that plane, right? They changed the world. They poked the impossible. That's what Steve Jobs is saying. They poked a hole of the impossible. Those guys in that bicycle shop poked a hole in the impossible, and everybody raced through it. Last week, I left Vancouver. I flew to Seattle. I flew from Seattle to Atlanta. I flew from Atlanta to Tuscaloosa. And I took a car, to Birmingham, and I took a car from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa. Now, the airplane was invented in a bicycle shop. Where was the Ford invented? Where did Henry Ford invent the Ford? Where did he make it? Cars, you don't know. In a garage. He built his first car in a garage. He made a little mistake. When he got it finished and he tried to drive it out, the door was too narrow for him to get the car out. So he had to take the door and widen it for him to drive the car out. But that was not Henry Ford's real contribution. Henry Ford created an assembly line. He paid his workers $5 a day, and it allowed my wife to drive back from Birmingham in her BMW. out of a stinking garage. Henry Ford punched a hole in the impossible and made it possible for us, right? That's what Steve Jobs is talking about. That's what life is about. I read Scientific American every day. I got these things that come in, and I read about everybody learning stuff every day. Your life is going to be considerably different than mine. I remember my wife's grandfather was in a nursing home, and he was 80-something years old. And his name was Paul Jesse, and I went over there to see him because the nursing home in Tuscaloosa was one of my customers. And I said, Paul, do you remember seeing your first car? He said, boy, I remember that. He grew up in Tuscaloosa County, and he said, we heard it coming, and we ran down the road. And he said, we lived a mile off the road, and we ran down there as kids to see that car. And I said, well, Paul, what'd you think? He said, that was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen in my life. So, you know, how about King Solomon? You ever heard about the baby story? You heard about the baby? Y'all heard about the baby story, right? The mother that came in, and one woman had stole the other's baby. And they told King Solomon to judge which one was the mother. Y'all got to read this story. And they thought King Solomon was a wise man because he told one of his soldiers to take out his sword, and we're going to half the baby. We're going to split it and give each woman half. Right? And one of them said, no, don't kill the baby. Don't kill it. Just give it to the other lady. Now, everybody says in that story that King Solomon figured out who the mama was, because the mama loved the baby enough that that's who the mama was. That's our thinking. Babies didn't have that much value back then. As a matter of fact, a lot of sacrifices were newborn kids to the gods. So all King Solomon had to do was to figure out who loved the child the most. He really, in my opinion, didn't have to figure out who the mama was. That's what understanding human nature is about. That's what convergence is about. That's what intuition is about. Figuring out a way to make things better for people. And you got to get out of the boat. We talked about getting out of the boat, right? To be able to do that. Flip over. I mentioned briefly Covey. On my desk was a glass top. Under that glass top was a lot of inspirational stuff. And every now and then I would read it. And I would read that inspirational stuff. This is one of them that was under my desktop. And it's called, there's 8 characteristics of leaders. They are continually learning and growing. They read, they seek training, they take classes. They are service-oriented. Can't say that word. They want to serve people. They undertake a mission, not a career. Any attempt to become an effective leader without shouldering the weight of service to others will simply not succeed. I was there to serve my employees, to help my employees be as good as they could be. They radiate positive energy. My wife always sees the glass half empty. I see it half full. They have no time for complaining, criticizing, or comparing. We do not need to compare this fraternity chapter to anybody else. That is a loser's game. We need to compare this chapter to what we're capable of doing. To hell with the rest of them. And that's what he's saying right there. They believe in other people, but they realize that behavior and potential are two different things. They don't carry grudges. I told my wife, God has blessed me with a great ability to forget. That is a characteristic I'm very jealous of. When you manage people, that is a great characteristic to have. They refuse to label, stereotype, categorize, or prejudge people. They lead balanced lives. They have fun. My wife don't like having fun, but I do. They do recognize absolutes and courageous, there's that word again, condemn the bad and champion the good. I'm reading some of my underlinings here. They see life as an adventure. They are like adventurers entering new territory for the first time. Not sure what they will find, but certain they will enjoy it. Every day that I wake up, I'm entering new territory. So are you. You've never lived today. You don't know what's going to happen today. You may have a plan, but it's new territory. It's a challenge. So begin it with purpose. They are synergistic. They improve almost any situation they're involved in. I had a class with one of my employees in Dora, and I was explaining to them about synergy. And I had up on the little chart that 2 and 2 is equal to 5. And I explained that synergy, you got 4 things, but because synergy interacts between the 4, it's actually as if you got 5. So I went through this long explanation. Sometimes I'm worried about you guys too, because I go through this long explanation about what it was. 2 and 2 is equal to 5. Synergy. So I get through, there were some other points, and I'm going out the door, and one of my local operation guys, lineman, came up to me, and he said, Jim, he said, I don't give a shit what you say about synergy. 2 and 2 is equal to 4. For some reason, I thought that was funny. I had wasted my time on the boy. They find ways to renew themselves. And we talked about this. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And Covey says emotional is one of the characteristics. I say emotional is an outcrop of your spirit. So if you concentrate on your physical, spiritual, and mental, your emotional will be there. Physical exercise. They exercise their mind through reading, writing, and visualization. They accept responsibility for their own lives, decisions, reactions. Spiritually, they listen to that inner voice through meditation and prayer. And I've always said when you pray, you're talking to yourself more than anybody else. You're talking about your needs. And prayer is an important part of my life because I'm talking to myself as much as anything. I say, this is what I want to accomplish. Ask for help in a humble way. If we make the choice to take control of our lives, to develop the traits of leaders, we can open the floodgates of growth and influence for ourselves. Challenges. Identify the habits in your life that serve as barriers to the growth you seek in that area, and attack those barriers. Now, what the heck does all this have to do with this chapter? When I came in 1999, I am a mission-oriented person. I want to accomplish something. We didn't have a mission in the chapter, verbalized mission. We didn't have a creed, a chapter creed. This was in 1999. So I went to Ollie, and I said, Ollie, who was the president then. Y'all know Seth Newton, right? Ollie was his brother, and he was president at the time. And I said, why don't I write us a creed? I will take the Power Company Creed, Southern Company Creed, the Rotary Club Creed, the Lions Club Creed, the JC's Creed, and I will try to write us a creed for our chapter. And me and you will sit down and we'll discuss it. And that's what this is. And that's how this came about. And the chapter voted this to be our creed. And I kind of want to go over it with you. So this is what we will do. This is what we say we will do. We are young men of vision and leadership, striving to improve our communities, our fraternities, and ourselves. The Beta Way. We believe that faith in God is the foundation of life. We talked about knowing yourself, and remember I said go in there and write down all this stuff of what you want to accomplish in life, right? I did that when I was 20. The Temple of Apollo in Greece. Are y'all familiar with the Greek gods? Are you familiar with the slogan, know thyself? Have you ever heard that? It was the words on the front of the Temple of Apollo. Know thyself. What did it mean? It meant that before you entered that temple, you had to realize you were not a god. You came in that temple humble because you were a mortal. Apollo was a god. There's something out there that's bigger than ourselves. And I was telling Will tonight, the older you get, you realize that some of these things you thought were chances, maybe they weren't. It's called the mystery of life. So, you have faith in the mystery of life, and that is the foundation of life. We tell the truth. We talked a lot about the truth in here, didn't we? And how truth is the basis for trust, and how a lie can destroy trust. It can destroy organizations. We keep our promises. What's the promise? I promised Joe McCrary in 1998 when he asked me, would I help this fraternity? I said yes. Be careful what you promise, guys. Not that, because in my opinion, a promise is a commitment. It has meaning. It has purpose. It's not something you just toss about. A promise without commitment is what? It's a lie. And it destroys trust, and it destroys leadership. Don't make promises casually. If you're going to be here at 7 o'clock, by God, be here at 7 o'clock. If you make a commitment to your wife, be committed. Commit to your son. Be committed. A commitment to this fraternity. Be committed. That's what a promise is. That's what that means. We keep our promises. Fair to others. We're going to be fair to others. Fair to others. I've had employees come to me and say, Jim, you're not fair. I said, oh, yes, I am. I'm fair to each one of you individually. The deal was made between me and that other employee, not me and you. Fairness is a very subjective thing. It's a one-at-a-time occurrence a lot of times. Being fair does not mean that you take things lightly. It means that you make decisions and exceptions sometimes, but the rule still stands. Kicking people out of this fraternity is fair if it needs to be done. It's fair to the individual. They need to learn the lesson. They need to understand what they did is not satisfactory. And maybe kicking them out of the fraternity is the best thing that will ever happen to them in their lives. Firing somebody was the hardest thing I ever did. I wrote down in the book the night before I was going to fire this guy how hard it was for me to do this. I was told that he had to go. So I went down there and I fired him. It was the best thing that ever happened to him. He got a better job. So that's what fairness means. It's not a mamby-pamby thing, being fair. It's tough. We set high goals for ourselves and our fraternity. We're going to win the Knox every year, guys. That ain't easy, is it? That's a high goal. That's what we want to accomplish. We would have had it last year. We want to continue that. We're active in our communities. I've been here when we didn't really concentrate on this, but you guys do a great job. You even have a measurement for it, right? Each one of you have a goal, right? So many hours of community service. Hey, that's valuable. You'll learn a lot from doing that. Don't shy away from that. Take responsibility for your actions. Y'all ever heard the phrase, man up? Yeah. A lot of these politicians say, I'll take the responsibility for that. Well, quit! If you're going to take personal responsibility, there is an implication involved in that. You will take a hit. You can't say, I'm going to take personal responsibility and not take a hit. What the heck? That's a lie. That's a lie. Again. This is one for respect others' opinions and views. We got to agree to disagree and still be friends. And a lot of things I've told you, you don't agree with me. And that's fine. That's fine. But we can be gentlemen about it, can't we? We can be gentlemen and respect everybody else, can't we? You heard of Southern gentlemen? That's what Southern gentlemen want. Of course, now Southern gentlemen also challenge each other to duels, so be careful. We don't want to do that. How about this one? Practice temperance in all of our actions. I love that one. See that word practice in there? It says practice temperance, doesn't it? It says, it don't say, I'm going to be temperate. You have to practice it. It's a lifelong challenge. I could get drunk every night if I wanted to. I don't have no responsibilities in the morning. I'm retired. I could do a lot of things, right? But I practice temperance in my life. because it keeps my life in balance. Temperance in everything. Practice it. And you don't know this yet, but when you get initiated, that last one's going to be important. Honor your beta obligations and principles. I won't go into that. Just remember that it's a promise that you make to this fraternity and to this chapter. It's a promise. And if you don't keep it, you're lying. So, that's what we want to do. Now, remember I said when I was at the power company, we wanted to keep the lights on when they were on, and when they went off, we wanted to get them all back on, and we wanted to provide power quality. And the way we were going to do that is we were going to respond to external inputs. We're going to communicate those to who could get the job done, and we're going to follow through to make sure it was done. We had a mission. We had a way that we were going to monitor and do it. Flip over. So, we got a chapter mission. We call it our creed. How are we going to measure that? There's 3 principles. That creed is our standard of conduct of Beta Theta Pi and the Delta Theta Chapter, and it contains a set of principles and objectives. It's in our Constitution, bylaws, and creeds. These ideas are action steps for our fraternity that lead to our success. And here's the thing. This is key, even more so now than it was in '99. Society judges our fraternity and our chapter on how we uphold these principles, and it is incumbent upon the members of Delta Theta to uphold these principles and objectives so that you don't wind up on social network with 5 mugshots of people who did not uphold the standards of our chapter and our fraternity. You got me? The only thing different than that mug is they didn't have a profile, right? They were straight on shots. Have you seen them? You seen their pictures? The only thing is that they didn't have a profile and a number. But they'll get the profile and the number. They're going to get that. It's coming. So we got a standard of conduct. Next, accountability. What the heck does that mean? We are accountable to the principles and objectives of our fraternity. Our success must be judged by our accomplishment or failure to accomplish the objectives of Beta Theta Pi and the Delta Theta's standard of conduct. There again, our chapter will be judged by our national fraternity on our adherence to these principles. There must be consequences. I got that underlining in red, don't I? Yeah, I do. There must be consequences for not inculcating and adhering to these standards in our chapter and as individual members. Hazing is not allowed. Explanation point, period, ever. We got to figure out another way. Integrity. When you talk about integrity, boop. When you talk about integrity, what are we talking about?
The foundation of our success.
The foundation. This building has integrity. That elevator has integrity. When you get in that elevator out there, you think it's going to carry you to the 3rd floor, right? You don't think you're going to crash, because when you get to the 3rd floor, you know what's under that elevator? Nothing. It's a big hole, guys. So if you don't think that elevator's got integrity, will you get on it? I don't think so. Because you could get up to the 3rd floor before the doors open, poof! Every time I get with those big elevators, I was on the 32nd floor in Seattle. I got in that elevator, I said, damn, if this thing don't hold me up, I'm going to, you know what, 32 floors, shoo! It's kind of like Niagara Falls, man. We're going down the elevator at Niagara Falls, and it's way down there. And One lady said, well, what if we're down there in the cave? Y'all know where not Niagara Falls, Ruby Falls in Chattanooga. You know where that is? So this lady says, what happens if it caves in? And the guy's running the elevator. He says, lady, you won't be buried any deeper or any cheaper. I thought that was pretty good. But integrity. Our chapter gains integrity from how we adhere to and accomplish the goals of our fraternity. Integrity is the foundation for our success. Integrity is more than honesty. You know, we talked about honesty. But guess what? They're honest crooks. They get caught, yeah, I stole from that guy. Yeah, I robbed him. People commit murder and say, hey, they were honest. I shot him. I killed that son of a gun. I hated him. But that's not integrity, is it? There are honest crooks, honest murderers. Integrity leads to internal strength for our chapter and its members. Integrity is the foundation for our strong future as a chapter and as individuals. Integrity is the correlation between what we say we're going to do and what we actually do. Now, there's some high-minded stuff right here, guys. High-minded promises. It's going to take integrity to live up to it. Think about that for a minute. We've talked about integrity. I like to call it critical mass. Because here's what I believe about organizations. I believe I work on one individual at a time. You know, one individual. And I keep working on that individual, and I give him goals in the conference, and I pat him on the back, and I say, or her, man, that's great, that's good. And I keep moving them along. And guess what happens to them? They get a critical mass about them. It's like having a nuclear reaction with these people. They generate their own power. You get one in an organization like that, and then you start working on the others, and before long, every one of them has a critical mass, and that organization builds its own energy. And me as a manager just sit back and watch it. It's cool, man. It's cool. It happens. It comes from being integrity. It comes from having integrity. Individually. And then that individuals come together, and all of them got integrity, and there's a synergy about them that doesn't allow the meteorites to get to Earth. That when a problem hits that group, the resistance to it dissolves it before it does any damage. So, all these outside influences. Sigma News are doing this. Fiji's are doing this. But we ain't. We don't ever get hit by the meteorite. We don't ever get wiped out. Because when it hits us, and because of our integrity and the critical mass of every member in this, it don't go nowhere. It burns up in our atmosphere. It's a stinking lie. And we're going to burn it up. That's my philosophy. I think that's what our philosophy ought to be. We don't need to compare ourselves to other people. You're letting meteorites in on top of us, and one of them will destroy us. Does that make any sense? That's the only thing that keeps our earth safe is our atmosphere. The only thing that's going to keep our chapter safe is our chapter's atmosphere. And you. And your integrity. Flip it over. I want to read something to you. I read this when I was 20 years old. And I think this is cool, man. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your father, your mother, or your wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts the most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. Some people may think you're a straight shooting chum and call you a wonderful guy, but the man in the glass says you're a bum if you can't look him straight in the eye. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you clear to the end. And you've passed your most dangerous, difficult test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of life and get pats on your back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass. Fellas, that's it.